What does it take to create a vibrant, thriving life? First, the sad news is that Thoreau was right. Most people are leading quiet lives of desperation, lacking in meaning, fulfillment, and vitality. But we choose more. We choose to create extraordinary lives. And the Art of Vibrant Living show entertains you with inspiration, empowerment, and education to create your life into a masterpiece. It's time. Let's vibe up. Hey y'all, aloha, welcome to the show. I am Daniel Aaron. I am your host. This is the Art of Vibrant Living show where we do what? Guess. Yes, absolutely. We empower you and inspire you, maybe even educate you to help you to live your most vibrant, thriving, amazing life. And today's show is going to be extraordinary. I'm so excited. We have an amazing guest who is uniquely and powerfully positioned to help us all really raise the quality of our life, maybe even the duration of it. You know, a longer good life is always fantastic. And before I introduce her and bring her up, you, my friend, visiting the show, whether it is live or by rebroadcast, please, I hope that you are on track to your life being the most extraordinary experience you could ever imagine, even beyond what you could imagine. And if you are not there, if you feel challenged, if you just know you want to go to the next level, please reach out. You can email me, daniel@danielaaron.com. I would love to support you. I don't know how I can do that yet until I get to meet you, but guaranteed I got some ways to help you, even if it's recommendations for other stuff. So all that said, y'all, such an exciting show today. Dr. Talia Shafir, I probably mispronounced her name. Darn, I meant to ask her for sure on that. Is a quite an educated woman, dual master's degree, a Ph.D. in Somatic and Spiritual Psychology, a Master Somatic Movement Therapist. She's well experienced in past life regression, teaching English as a second language therapy, movement, past life, all of this just to help us understand what's going on. How can we take the past, leave it in the past, and how can we move forward in the best way possible? I could say more, but hey, better we hear directly from her. So, Dr. Talia, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's Shafir.
Shafir.
Shafir,
Good.
Yes. So
thank you. I'm
you're
glad
welcome.
we clarified that. So now I have the minor advantage here of knowing a little bit about you because we've chatted a bit. I've gotten to read about you, but for our guests who might not have that advantage yet, might not know you, would you give us just a little bit of the background? How did you get to this point in your life and doing this work?
Sure. I often ask myself the same question. I think it could be well described as kind of backing in, backing in and finding myself suddenly doing what I'm doing. I started out as a professor of English as a second language at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, number of years ago, and then I came back to the States and was a vice principal of a 5-campus Hebrew school and taught Hebrew. And then I decided that I would go into sales and marketing. So I, in the very beginning of the home computer craze, I started to sell home computers, and that was in San Francisco, and got very interested in how people use computers, what they, what the problems are, how to solve them. And so, here we see the beginnings of a foundation of, well, what's the problem now? Now, what's the solution? I did a lot of marketing, worked my way up to being a director of sales and marketing in Silicon Valley, worked a number of years there. And then I got interested in hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And living in California, that, the offerings were plentiful. And I started to study something called alchemical hypnotherapy, which was an elegant mix of Ericksonian hypnosis and Jungian imaginal realm work. I started to get very interested in the workings of the brain and the mind, and how our thoughts affect us, and what's going on with the body. Because the people I was working with started to add a somatic piece long before somatic was a buzzword. And we were doing things like, putting people in trance and talking to the body. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And you're, to tell your body to do. You don't know what to tell your body, but your body knows what to do. Mm. And that became a lifeline into watching people's bodies just move and unravel and unwind years of patterning and letting go from a point of view of the body. And it was very interesting. At the same time, Pat Ogden, who was worked with Bessel van der Kolk, some people may know, we're beginning to teach something called sensory motor psychotherapy for the treatment of trauma and post-traumatic stress. And that came about just about the same time as I had started working with Dr. Roger Woolger from the UK, who was doing a type of past life work, past life regression, that had a somatic component. In other words, he included the body because he had been studying about what Wilhelm Reich was doing with the body and character structure. And so, this salad started to come about. And the direction I was going was interested in, why we behave the way we do, why we react and respond to, certain circumstances in our lives, and how to use the body as a resource, and how to build resources in the body. And it kind of went in through there. And I found myself immersed really in not only language and how language and movement of the body actually coalesce and come together, that you can't just talk about something. You just talk about something, you may see something. Of course, you're going to see something, and it's not wasted time, but it doesn't get to the root of it, and it doesn't really expand all of what we can be, and all of what we have to work with. So I became a hypnotherapist, and then I became a somatic movement therapist. I thought I was coming for 2 weeks to a training by Dr. Martha Eddy, in which she calls dynamic embodiment, because New York is really was more the movement dance capital, whereas California was more the imaginal realm, the energy work, that kind of thing. So I come to New York, and I think I'm going to take a course for 2 weeks to get some techniques, which is how a lot of people think about the somatic component of therapy, that we should talk, and then we'll break it up, and we'll throw in a somatic piece, an exercise. The thing with somatic movement therapy is that the main focus is in movement, because how we move very often reflects how we think, and our language reflects the energy of our experience. So it is a conceptual approach through the body to the brain, and the brain is interpreting the body's experience, the brain and nervous system. So I end up doing a Ph.D. in a non-traditional place, of course. What else? And I do just about 10 years of research in language and movement. And what do the two have in common? And how much of the information that someone is trying to not only understand themselves, but convey in therapy comes through the body and the body's movement and the patterns. So that's how I got to where I am now.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I just love the way things evolve sometimes in mysterious ways. And even your, what would seem like a side trip into sales and marketing, right? You can look back at the breadcrumbs now and say,
Mhm.
that was really an important part of the journey. And probably not just because it led you to the next step, but there were pieces in there. And there's so much in what you shared that's worth us bringing forward a little bit more. Right. And I love that you spoke about hypnosis and self-hypnosis,
Mhm.
right? And the you brought up the word somatic and a little bit teased the distinction between somatics and somatic therapy and somatic movement,
Mhm.
and language, right? And that language is such an integral part of this. But let me back up just because some people may not be on the same page already. This might be like, well, what are they talking about here? I know for me, when I grew up as a kid, I was born right into the era of better living through science, right?
Mhm.
And that was an era of complete distrust for the body's natural wisdom, or even disdain for it in some way,
Mhm.
right? So I grew up in without breast milk. I know you're used to, you've gone into you're researching into the world of birth and that, and I was at the time myself where it was better to give a kid a formula than natural breast milk, right? And that's just, I just say that because it's sort of symbolic of this better living through science. And I grew up so disconnected from my body in a lethargic family. And it was only when I kind of got whacked up the side of the head by the divine that I woke up to say, I think this body's got something to do with the whole picture here. And maybe I'll investigate it a little bit. So I guess what I want to connect to and ask you more about here is the idea of the body being not just a vessel for the spirit, but an integral part of the whole picture, and the importance of what is the importance of the body and movement as far as healing and health and vibrancy. I said a lot, but does that make sense as a question?
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're actually in good company. I mean, uh, and now it's becoming a little more mainstream, but the attachment system and how well you have been supported and comforted, soothed, and and reassured as from in utero all the way to throughout the lifespan, but especially in the early developmental years, and how that relationship lays the groundwork for other relationships. But it's funny because when I said you're in good company, Freud for a long time would was saying, mother breastfeeding, there's no, he didn't know about attachment. Bowlby, who was one of a psychoanalyst and was one of the group for Freud that broke away. And actually, if you're a good teacher, then your students will break away and create something and build on what you've taught. So, Freud said, "Oh no, mother is just, that's just, for food." But but that is so not true, and of course was proven, because it is communication. How we're touched, how we're greeted, how we're handled, the quality of our eye contact, how we speak to one another, our tone of voice, how we look at one another, how our skin comes in contact with mother, especially. So, breastfeeding then was not just about um, what food is better, what formula is better. It's about the communication and the connection that occurs. And so we now know that breastfeeding is also not necessarily feeding, but suckling is a regulatory process, so that, what's happening with an infant and a toddler, you're going out, you're getting a lot of information through your eyes, through your ears, through the air you breathe, and a lot of information. And how do you integrate it? Well, that baby comes back to the breast, not necessarily because they're hungry all the time, but because, okay, that's, are you there, mother? Are you in proximity? Are you emotionally accessible? Are you attuned to my needs? Look, nobody's looking for perfection. If you find it, let me know. Please. I always say, if you find me a perfect mother, I'll find you a dead person. I mean, it's like we need these challenges. So that piece of being disconnected, you need that contact to be connected to your own body. It is. You mentioned that I was, interested in researching the birth process itself, and I've been one of the bodies of knowledge that I have studied quite a bit and have recently gone back to is body dynamics. Created by Elizabeth Marker in Denmark, and recently did a rebirth training, which was very interesting, in Portugal. And just going through that process and seeing what happened to me and what parts of me then connected to parts I didn't even know were there, was an amazing discovery. And I think that it's so important to get the support for discovery and exploration. And that's basically, you talked about sales and marketing before. And I always say, well, I'm always selling a product. It's permission to be. Let's hope we never run out of that product. So yeah, that touch and movement we develop in parallel, psychologically and physically. They go together. And language comes to extend our ability to communicate and also to receive communication, but it originates in experience.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, and it brings it to a greater level of understanding for us. And as you were saying that, part of what came to me is, and then this leads me to my next question for you, that part of that better living through science and disconnect from, say, the body's natural wisdom also contained this flavor of the doctor or the scientist or whoever it is with the lab coat knows best, right?
Yeah.
And for a time really conveyed a concept to like the lay people, the population, that, well, we need some expert outside of ourselves in order to be safe, in order to heal, in order to grow. And I'm seeing a strain coming through what you're sharing that's implying that, well, there's actually, one, maybe a natural wisdom to the body mind system, and two, that maybe it's able to heal and integrate on its own, that there's a natural process for that. Am I hearing that correctly, that sort of strain?
Yeah. Yes, I think you are. Look, yes, of course, if something's, you have a heart condition or, you broke your arm, let's hope the doctor knows, if not best, then better. But it's, these days, what are we talking about in the therapeutic container? We're talking about a relational container. Now, that means that, I have a variety of lenses through which to view what you may be saying to me. But I always have to keep in mind to listen to what you're saying. because language is interesting. We actually speak. Our unconscious will speak, and our conscious mind will speak. And one of the things I like to emphasize is to help people hear when their unconscious is speaking, and when their conscious mind is deciding to take over because its job is to justify what you decided to do, which may not be exactly the thing you really want to do. So yes, I think it's important to have a relational container, and it's important to encourage people to experiment with. That's why movement, go move. See what happens when you turn your head like this. Okay, what do I see? And what happens when I turn my head like this? Maybe I see something else. Well, how does that feel to know that just a movement of the head gives you a different thought? What's that like for you? And that question of what's that like for you? Where are you feeling it? And to really let people know, no, when I ask you, I'm really asking a question. I'm really interested in your experience. And let's try expanding your experience to see, and to encourage people to go back. Therapy happens once, twice a week, maybe once every other week. 1 hour, now it's a 45-minute hour. I don't do that. I don't believe in 45-minute hours, but it's a small amount of time. And, it's not, you're not going to put your problems on the shelf. They go out the door with you, or your questions. Not everything's a problem, challenges. So the movement continues. And so it becomes it's like a Mobius therapy, and in a Mobius, you meet yourself coming and going. And the idea is to gain confidence and value for yourself. I was discussing with a colleague the other day, and we were talking about one of the most important things that a therapist can do is witness someone's progress. And I also add being a cheerleader. It's the smallest thing, because it's the language of paradox. The small things are big, and the big things are often small. And so it's my pleasure to say, oh, you said that. Wow. You remember 6 weeks ago, you wouldn't have even dared to say anything. Well, that is the attachment system as it should have been, right? Little support, not enough, but just not too much, but just enough. And this is a big part of therapy, not holding on to someone. I don't believe that therapy should be a national pastime. On the other hand, you need to stay with it enough so that you can witness your own growth and have somebody there when somebody perhaps wasn't there before for you. So that's how I look at it.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, and I'll reflect back in a way. My experience is very much related to that in my work as a coach. Two of the things that you said are so much a part of my experience. One is when I'm with a client and they say something, especially when they're not trying to say something, when they're just, casually speaking, this is what's going on. It's like in every sentence, I hear 12 things that are like, oh, that's important. That's important. That's important. Because when we're relaxed, just as you said, the unconscious speaks. And, and if we're listening well, in the roles we're playing, then we have access to, to the mass of the iceberg that's under the surface that's really going to affect things. So I love that you brought that forward in terms of the language. And the other is, there's a great leadership principle. I'm sure you've heard it, that goes something like this. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And in my work, when I first started, and this is going back 3 decades, but when I first started working with students and clients, I was so much about, here's what you do, and this is what you do, and this, but it didn't really occur to me then. It's become more and more prevalent for me how important, as you said, being a cheerleader, or being someone that encourages, loves, and encourages and reflects back someone's magnificence.
Yeah.
And it's astounding to me. The more I do that, the less I feel like I need to say, well, here's some advice, or this is what you do. Like, when people realize how amazing they are, a lot starts happening on its own. So that's been for me just a fantastic discovery. And you gave me a new lens on that, in terms of, yeah, that right. A lot of us really missed out on proper attachment parenting, or early conditioning. And that's probably why it's so important and valuable now. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, the word attachment gets so many definitions. And that thing, attachment parenting so let me set this straight. So
Yeah, please.
attachment is a system that is not active all the time. If you're a parent, first of all, the attachment system belongs to the child. Bonding is what the parent does. The parent is supposed to be, proximate, close by, close enough to hear that the kid needs you, um, emotionally accessible, and attuned. Now, it doesn't always work that way, right? So, um, that attunement is something. If, for instance, we had a parent that um, they're more attuned to their own needs, and the child comes with, I need that, and they say, well, but you don't need that. Look what I have. We're going to do what I need. Um, then the child doesn't become attuned to their own needs. And I think one of the things that happens is, as that attachment system um, transforms from actual touch and proximity, and we spend more and more time away, and and as the hippocampus begins to be able to store memory, um, that attachment system that was very much, where are you, mom, um, becomes mental representation.
Hmm.
And so we have these imprints and brain maps, and all it takes is one piece of small sensory input to get the nervous system organized in, oh, I know what that is, and this is how we react to that. And and so that's a big part of what we're unraveling, identifying and changing in therapy. But you have to bring, once again, the body back into it. And so, I can, you can ask me a question, and I can say, oh yeah, that absolutely agree with you. Do I? Really? Am I? And maybe my shoulders are coming forward a little bit, and I don't know how I feel about that. Well, yeah, I don't know. Now, as a somatic movement person, I'm watching that body tell me something else. And instead of having a big long discussion about it, I would say, just for a second, feel where your weight is. You feel what you're sitting on? Where's your weight? You know where your sit bones are? Just see if you can just move back a little till you hit your sit bones. Oh yeah. Well, that's fine. So what happened when you did that? What happened to your spine and your back, your shoulders, and your head? Just look. Are you looking at the same thing you were looking at 2 minutes ago? Oh no, I'm not. How does that feel? Well, that feels different. That feels open. So then I'd say, maybe, well, just put your shoulder blades together a little bit and feel your head come up. Maybe I'd say something like, hi, when did you get here? Welcome. And I don't have to do a big lecture, and I don't, the discovery is in the synchronicity. Oh, and when you pick your head up, hey, somebody else is there. I don't have to say anything else. And then if I can just hold the quiet place, that void where now the brain is reorganizing and learning something different, then the connections begin to happen that I would never know about. So I need to hear it from the person in front of me. And so that's how the body intertwines with talking. And, I mean, we're a little confined here because we're confined to a screen, right? But in the actual doing of therapy, in the actual place, we would get up and move. It's like enough talking, let's move. And then all kinds of things come up. It's really interesting. But we very often find ourselves trapped in what I would call a piece of the geometry of movement. And that's not my wording. It's the wording of Ellen Goldman, who is a movement therapist and an author. And we were working the other day on the diagonal of movement, which means, it has movement words to it, which I won't use right now, but it's like, if it's like up there, it's like, oh, this is what I would love this, but it's never going to happen. It's like, but I really want it, but no, they're not going to be, and I'm going back and forth. And this is, where do people come to therapy? I tried this, and I seem to be coming up with the same results. I can't think of what else to do. Well, if you're always looking here and you're always looking there and you're just working the diagonal, you're working in dimensions. The irony is I'm looking for a point and I think I know what that's supposed to look like. Doesn't look like that. I go into disappointment. I go into anger. Well, maybe I'll look for it again. Well, I go back to the same place. Well, I go, well, maybe it's over there, but I'm still on a diagonal. So how can I help somebody with that? I just tell them to keep on pointing and then take their hands and make believe they're in a room, in a cube, right? And here's another part and push this part. How about this? And what's here? What's in front of you? And what's in back? And now I'm in planes. Now I'm in vertical planes and horizontal table planes, and I'm in sagittal planes, and I'm not here. Oh, there's other things to do. Oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could just go forward and see what's in front of me. And then people hear themselves saying things like that. And you can see it on their faces. So using the movement to evoke language, using the language to pair with movement, we start to settle and come to into synchrony with the conflicts within, which is starting point of solving the conflicts external to us, right? So that's how that kind of meshes together. You can see it's not starting a sentence here and finishing here and now you got it, take notes, there'll be a test in 10 minutes. Not going to happen. If you pay attention to your own body and you begin to see how somebody else works, did you say something? Did they move forward? Are they trying to connect with you? You know about, I mean, NLP, it's, rapport, right? Neuro-linguistic programming, it's like, but somebody does this, you kind of do this, and it makes them feel comfortable. That's part of coaching, right? Well, it is actually a very small part of this, because if you're there and I'm, I'm like, yeah, talk to me. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? I'm right here.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, there's so much richness in what you're talking about that I'm aware for you and I having some similarities to our backgrounds makes a lot of sense. Not
Mhm.
necessarily obvious for
Mhm.
everyone else. As you were speaking just then, I thought of a couple things. I'll mess up this reference, but it was a gosh, one of the great Russian playwrights. Maybe it was Chekhov. There's a line in one of his plays that said, "Oh, it's almost there." Somebody, the character, famous character, said, "So and so lived a short distance from his body." Right.
Yes.
Um, and I remember like reading that in high school and being like, what are they talking about? I don't get it. And then later when I realized like, oh, I've been outside of my body when I got into my first movement with
Mhm.
martial arts and yoga and realizing like, wow, I've just like, I have not been present in my body and how important that became. And I forget now because I've been immersed
Mhm.
in worlds of movement and yoga and martial arts for years, that
Mhm.
there's still a lot of the population that is not inhabiting their body, and there's and let me clarify because that might sound weird, who's not really present in the
Mhm.
body. Like, of course they're using it and moving around, but there's this primacy of the head that's so
Mhm.
popular and common, right? People just living in the thought forms. And you described a little bit what happens when the speech is incongruent from the bodily truth, or the truth
Mhm.
as it's expressed in the body. And I thought of Dr. Paul Ekman and his
Mhm.
great research about the emotions of the face and how
Mhm.
micro expressions always show what's going on in the inside. And you referred to it a little bit in terms of the wisdom of body language, right? When you referenced, you could say
Mhm.
yes, but if you're shaking your head, then probably some part of you is not saying
Mhm.
yes. So, and I know part of I'm understanding that part of the way you work with clients when people come to you and they've got challenges or goals or issues, whatever they're working with, part of what you do is, well, there'll be some talking, but there's also, get up and move.
Mhm.
And you just gave that great example of, well, what happens
Mhm.
if you shift back a little bit and, oh, somebody's here now that wasn't present a minute ago. Here's a question though, for anyone in our audience who might not have the wonderful opportunity to come work with you in person in New York, uh, who is saying, "Yeah, I'm kind of getting the feeling there's more to this body. There's more wisdom here to somatic movement as a therapy." How can people engage with it? What can they do on their own to start taking advantage of this wisdom?
Well, um, big question. I think that if someone is looking for a therapist in person, that um, you know, any of the trauma pieces, um, sensory motor psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, those are good places to start. But it doesn't mean that everything is trauma. As a
Hmm.
matter of fact, there's also disruption of the attachment system in childhood. Doesn't have to be trauma. Um, but whatever it is, we're trying to put the pieces back together. And how do you do that? Well, first of all, and it's and I live in New York, right? Good luck here. You have to stop for a moment. Just stop. I think that one thing you can do when you feel yourself getting into a tizzy about something, and your thoughts are running away from you, if you can just remember to stop and just check your body, just do a body scan. It's like just turn your focus inward and see where tension is in your body, and you will be very surprised that the minute you actually identify a point of tension, it will change.
Hmm.
And it's always the easiest thing always is to notice your breathing. A lot of times people will hold their breath intermittently and not realize it. Well, how am I breathing? When I first start working with people, I go, okay, so what's your breathing like? And they go, normal. Well, okay. Normal for, well, okay, what's normal for you? And then, it's like, put your hand here and take a breath. Feel that collarbone move? No? Do it again. Because that's where your lungs come up to.
Mhm.
Really? You know, to do that, to do yoga if you can, to to do Pilates is a wonderful exercise. But exercise is a good way to feel your body and get to know your body. But when we do somatic therapy, we're talking about context, because without context, just getting in touch with your body does not tell you how your body will react in a certain set of circumstances. And it is difficult when you're first starting out to realize this stuff. When you get re-traumatized, or you're in PTSD or something's happening, to actually remember the tools you have or what you can do. I think the one of the definitions of a mature adult is that we can self-regulate. We know we have resources, and we also know when to reach out and ask for help, and ask for a hand. And when we get what we need, to say thank you and come back, and not think we have to hang on to this person for the rest of our lives. That's why I say, therapy isn't a national pastime. Um, Very often people will come to me who've been in therapy for 15, 20, 25 years sometimes, and they, just like, and I feel like something, I'm not quite getting it. Well, you have to go to the roots. You have to look at the patterning, and that patterning is right here. It really is. But it takes time. It takes time. It's fascinating. I think curiosity is the best thing that anybody can cultivate and allow.
Right. Well, there's a old saying you may have heard that curiosity skilled the cat.
Yeah, I'll buy that
And
one.
I'm with you. I love your curiosity, your love of learning, and and I'll highlight one of the things you just said, which I think is brilliant there, and it's so simple. Like something that everybody has access to is the wisdom of their own body and their awareness. So the incredible value of just stopping for a moment, just pausing. In the yoga language, there's a word called pratyahara, which means withdrawal of the senses. And these days, more than ever, that's so important because we're constantly bombarded with so much input. And if we choose to pause sometimes and say, okay, just hold on a second, and really close our eyes or not and tune in. And I love that you said, the awareness is, you didn't say these words, but instantly transformative. As soon as we become aware of a place of tension, well, it's going to shift. And so that's powerful.
Yes.
So as time's flying along, I want to check in with you because one of the things that that you have been into and work with and researched is past life, right? And you work as doing past life regression, I think. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And this is an area that, again, like for me, I didn't grow up with any awareness of, well, multiple lives, past lives, any of that. That came to me later on. And it came through me in sort of a dramatic way, which I'll say after. But would you just, in case people aren't aware of what past life regression means, what got you into that, and what is it, and why is it important?
Okay. That's it? Only those 15 questions? Okay. Uh, well, I love the past life process. Truthfully, you can sometimes get to something a lot quicker just through looking at a movement, a posture, and a gesture. But that past life piece, and it's so is compatible with the Jungians, because Jungians love their stories, right? And there's a lot to it. The unconscious doesn't like direct speech. It likes indirect. It likes metaphor and analogy. And I met Roger Woolger, I don't know, in 1998, 97, 98, something like that. And it was right after I had done all of this hypnotherapy training and supervising and creating a practice and working with the body in hypnotherapy. And so Roger Woolger came along, and he talked about the body's role in past life therapy. And, regression, the word regression really gets a bad rap because everybody thinks, oh, going back. Well, what do I have to go back for? And what's this got to do with the present? And it's not, it's past life, but he actually ended up calling his work deep memory process. And it really is deep memory. Now we're talking about intergenerational trauma. And in the movement world, Dr. Judith Kestenberg, who was a doctor and psychoanalyst and created her own movement profile, along with her friend Anna Freud, talked about how trauma in the mother is not only transmitted from in the blood, crossing the blood-brain barrier in utero with adrenaline and cortisol, but it is also transmitted through breathing patterns. So, I mean, you're sitting with somebody and they start doing this. They start taking a breath and talking like this, and they take another breath, and they, and on the exhale they're talking, and then they're talking and you start to tighten in your body, right? And so there are all kinds of things that happen. So when you do the past life work, Roger created a protocol that said you have 3 doorways. You can go in through the language, you can go in through the emotion, and you can also go in through a body part. And so, if you have somebody who is telling a story, and I will interview them, and I'll take out some sentences that they have said that talks about how they describe the thing they want to work on, the mystery in their life, or what they're feeling. I don't feel like I belong in this family, or I can't figure out how I got here, or I have blue eyes and everybody else in my family has brown eyes, or whatever they're talking about. And you pull out the language that has energy to it. It's the best I can do for you, but you just, or they're repeating it or something, and you get 3 or 4 sentences. And you can go in with that. You tell somebody to close their eyes and repeat those sentences, and the energy of those sentences revolve in telling a story. Somebody comes in with a physical ailment or a deformity or something, a birth, something that they've had, and you go in through that, and the story emerges. You can also go in through an emotion. If somebody gets very emotional, you can go in through that emotion, follow that emotion in, because the emotion is really the flashlight into what's really going on. So you don't have to go through a big, hypnosis piece. You can follow that repetition, because repeating something again and again will put you in another brainwave state. Following the story and my asking questions brings someone to what the dilemma was in that lifetime. And part of the process is saying, okay, how did you die? And to actually have them move. Well, I'm a kid and I'm playing ball. Well, show me. Move your hand. Show me playing ball. Okay, you're going through okay, now you're going to go through your death. All right, show me going through your death. Now you're in a place. And so Roger integrated Tibetan Buddhism into this process. He's a very clever guy. And he said, okay, now you're in the bardo, that place in between. Well, not all of the soul goes to the bardo. It's just the unfinished piece. So once again, I just take a sidebar here and say, well, what has this got to do with my life here? Well, what are we doing in therapy? We are learning to process the unprocessed.
Hmm.
And the most prolific piece of unprocessed anything that we have, I don't care where you are, is grief. The unprocessed grief leads us to do many things so that we don't have to feel the loss. We don't have to feel the powerlessness of a loss. But until we can actually accept that and finish through and understand that there is repair. And so this is the powerful piece of the past life process, is that when you are in the bardo and you say, well, I never got a chance to, say goodbye to my mother, or I never got a chance to tell these soldiers that invaded our land that what you did and how you, and so, okay, tell them now. And there is something about having your eyes closed and being in that story that eliminates time. You can go 2 hours doing this and people will get up and they'll say, seems like I just laid down. So you lose the timelessness in the brain and you are actually working with the story, and it does have an effect. Totally. What's virtual reality? Same thing. Meet me on the holodeck, if you're a Star Trek fan. But that is what's going on. But adding the body and moving to it with it was a brilliant piece. So that was actually one of the first pieces I ever had about, if you have an emotion and you have a cognitive thought, then ask what's going on in the body. If you have a pain in the body or a sensation, then ask what the emotion is. So they are all connected. And speaking of connected, then that spiritual place is where we go beyond words and beyond gaining information through the filter of our language producing rational brain. For a while I used to go around asking myself, I know I have a left brain for a reason, but I'm doing all this right brain stuff. Why do I need a left brain? And I realized, to write stuff down and to be able to put words to it. Of course, that's a very important thing. But the revelation of who we are, what affected us, and what affects the world is something that is very much a part of our knowledge base. So
yeah, beautiful. I'm with you. And as you said, it reminds me of one of my favorite modalities, family constellations,
yes.
right? Which is, similar in the sense that, well, if we've not acknowledged or taken care of or dealt with something in the past, well, it's still affecting us. And if we go back and, pay attention, integrate, give voice to, then that changes the present and the future. So there's so much more we could say on that. Let me pause though and say, because again, time's ticking by here. Talia, is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything that you especially want to bring forward while we have the chance here?
Well, I think the only thing I can add is the recent research I've embarked upon with a couple of colleagues, and that is the importance of the birth process itself. And as I mentioned earlier, it was a real revelation to me that as to what actually going through a physical process of rebirth. Of course, this was the body dynamics model. There are other models, but they all, coalesce around a central theme here. That how often it shows up in our daily lives, and in terms of limitations and beginning impulses that don't get completed. And I think it is such an important lens to be able to look through. And I'm very excited about the work that I and my colleagues are going to be doing. And we're looking at what we did. We're looking at a couple of other models, and we're putting together what we think we want to add and expand on. And we'll be doing that around the world, hopefully. But I think that it's not just, here you are. And the most important thing that I think is how you are received. And and when I think about therapy and what do we want from it? We want to be received. And boy, it starts there.
That's beautiful. I love that. The more I grow in my work as a coach and a teacher and in my own research, the more I see that, and it's not just me seeing this, it's well documented, that potentially the most important part in any healing, in any good therapeutic relationship, and maybe in any thriving life, is the relationships that have love and valuing built into them, right? That quality of what the therapist or the coach or the healer brings to it. Of course, the techniques matter, and having the right questions to ask, all those things matter, though that just the importance of the basic element of caring. So I love that you brought that about how you are received being such an important part of it. And for me, go ahead, you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, and touch and movement, gesture and posture are all a part of how one communicates. What you're receiving, how much of it you're receiving, and what you can receive of yourself. It's kind of, when I teach, I'm always mindful, and most of the time I say this, I'm the teacher, but I can't really teach you anything. All I can do is create an environment in which you will learn. You have the opportunity to learn, should you, mission impossible, should you wish to accept it, and take it from there as a stepping stone to learn your own. Keep on learning, don't stop. Just because the teacher said so, come back 100%. After recess. Right.
Yeah. Well, and there's a great saying that all learning is self-learning, right? And to me, that's one of the greatest discoveries. And I think the most important part of a vibrant life is to have like the curiosity that you so well model, and that constant desire to an activity around learning and growing keeps us alive and vital and getting better at everything we care about.
I wrote a piece there's a Somatic Writing Collective, which is a really interesting challenge. And I wrote a piece called the transformational grammar, a generative grammar of a movement. And the very last line is what I think really encapsulates how we do learn. And what I said was, how I learned is what I learned. And a lot of people think it's the opposite. Well, what I learned is, I learned how to do it. No, how you learned it is what you learned. And which says that there are patterns. You can earn your security. Just because it didn't happen then doesn't mean it won't happen now. You can earn your security, and you can repattern. But repatterning is physical as well. And to actually be aware of the various body and muscle activations, but movements as well, as they blend into the maturation process psychologically, is really important. So that would be the thing I would want to emphasize here.
Beautiful. Thank you.
It's not just the technique. It's not just, oh, you said that. Oh, now do this. No, it's okay. Now say it. Maybe not without words. Now say it again. What is your body saying? Yeah.
All right. Well, we're up against the clock here, so I want to ask you one final question, if I may. It's the big question. It's the impossible question. Would that be okay?
Sure.
So, because I say it's impossible because you've got so much experience, so much knowledge, so much wisdom. To boil it down like I'm asking you to do here is impossible. Though, if you did have to, distill everything that you know about creating vibrancy and to say to our audience, what is the one piece of advice or the one suggestion you have on how to create a vibrant life? What would you say to that?
Don't stop. This, of course, is after I just said you have to stop for a moment, but stop for a moment, but don't stop. Don't let somebody's idea of how old you are, what gender you are, what level of education you are, where you live in the world, decide for you that you need to stop. Don't stop.
That's great. That's great. Well, beautiful. I love that. And I'm 100% with you. And Talia, thank you so much, not just for taking the time to be with us, but for, this amazing amount of work and learning and devotion to supporting people that you've done over these years, right? You've really cultivated such a body of wisdom and experience. And that is what allows you to come here and share so much in such a short time. So thank you for being just that model of vibrancy and for sharing so generously with us.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
It's great to have you here, and y'all, audience, friends, whether you again are with us live or by rebroadcast, thank you so much because you have an interest in creating more vibrancy in life. Beyond that, you are actually doing something about it. You're taking some time out to learn, create new patterns in your brain. And so my inquiry, my request for you, my command, if I may be so bold, is don't just take this as entertainment. Choose one thing, do one thing. So much that Talia offered in the last hour is valuable. Choose something and experiment with it. Put it into practice in your life. Again, if you would like some support, please reach out, daniel@danielaaron.com. Let's have a conversation. And know that this work you're doing, this understanding, this putting into place for your life to increase its vibrancy, it's not just you that benefits, it benefits the whole world. You're doing something beautiful for everybody. We are all connected. So y'all, thank you again so much for tuning in. Please be with us soon again. We got another amazing show coming up soon. Aloha, y'all. Mahalo for tuning in to the Art of Vibrant Living show, y'all. I'm Daniel Aaron, and may you live with great vibrancy.